Gary, Indiana is on the line as we predict the first ever 12-team playoffs.
In this first year of the 12-team playoff, how far will Alabama make it? Oh, wait.
Welcome to the PCS Volcast. I'm Shea and this is Jace. If you enjoy the video, give us a like and subscribe for more. Let's jump right into it.
Yeah, so as you can see here, here's the playoff bracket. It's been released for a little bit. Everyone should know what it looks like at this point. The one thing I wanted to start off with was the format. I personally like the format. I assume it'll go to a 14 or 16 team at some point. The one thing that everyone is calling to change, and the one thing I don't like either, is the way that it's seeded, meaning the automatic buys. I think that the four conference champions and the non-power four conference champions should get an automatic bid, but I do not think that they should get an automatic buy. Boise probably wouldn't even be at 12 in that format, but I don't know. I don't think that they should get an automatic buy. Penn State clearly has a pretty easy road, in my opinion, to that quarterfinal. What's your opinion on that automatic bye?
No, I agree, and I think a lot of people would agree with you. It's mostly the bye week that is troubling everyone. Get rid of that, and I don't really mind this setup.
Well, again, I assume we'll go to a 16 or 14 team at some point. That will make it much easier to begin with. But yeah, that's just been kind of the common discourse, I guess, with the playoffs starting out. But let's start out with the first game. The first game is on Friday, December 20th. The battle for Gary, Indiana, as you said, we have Indiana at Notre Dame.
Of course, very important game. Yeah. Notre Dame expected to win with a spread of 7.5. The over-under is at 51. I don't see it being as close as 7.
Yeah,
I think Notre Dame is a much better team than Indiana. I think Notre Dame would compete with anyone in the Big Ten and most of the teams in the SEC. I think they're the real deal. We just haven't really seen them play anybody.
Yep.
So I had Notre Dame whooping Indiana 35-17.
Okay. I went the similar route. Notre Dame is undefeated since that terrible home loss to Northern Illinois. That was just, that was terrible. Everyone thought their season was over from the jump. But ever since then, we've seen, Riley Leonard really get better as the season's gone on. Their defense is exceptional. Their trenches are exceptional. The one question, the one way that, Indiana could beat them perhaps is kind of the receivers on the outside are a little bit lacking. So they could, limit Notre Dame's ability to move the ball. But I had the same line of thinking as you. I had 35-25. Notre Dame covers, and yeah, they cruise on to the next round against Georgia.
The next game would be Saturday the 21st at noon. This is SMU playing at Penn State.
Yeah, another noon kickoff for Penn State. I'm sure they're getting pretty tired of those. The spread is 8.5 in Penn State's favor, and the over/under is 54. This is a really interesting matchup because I feel like the two toughest teams to predict the score specifically is SMU and probably Boise State, just because they seem like maybe two of the weakest in the field. I think SMU has a chance to win this game. The two ways they can win is apply a bunch of pressure to Drew Aller with their really, really underrated and solid D-line. And then Kevin Jennings, their quarterback, just has to be a superstar pretty much throughout the whole playoffs for them to, have some motion and make a run, I guess. But I don't know. Penn State has been pretty solid. You can say what you want about Penn State. Either schedule's been kind of weak or that nothing really jumps off the page that much. But Drew Aller, all things considered, has been relatively consistent. I'm going to take Penn State here, 34-25.
Yeah, everything you've said is completely correct, and I agree. I just don't want Penn State to win. I don't really have anything against Penn State. I'm just bored of Penn State, I guess.
I feel you. Yeah.
SMU is this team that kind of came out of nowhere. This is their first year in the ACC.
Pretty exciting too to watch.
Yeah, they're very exciting just in general. That the quarterback is insane. I would not be surprised if Penn State won by 14. It is at Penn State, which, really makes me question my own prediction. But I did take SMU. I think they just have more heart. I think they have more heart. And I think Kevin Jennings can make a big difference in this game, while Penn State's quarterback, Drew Aller,
He talk about boring and bland. I mean, he's the epitome of that. He's even more boring and bland than Will Howard, in my opinion.
Yeah.
But yeah, talking about Penn State, as I said, I just think they have more consistencies. Nick Singleton is super, super underrated and very good. Tyler Warren that's the only exciting part of their offense is when they line him up at quarterback or just do some crazy stuff with him. But yeah, I really like that because I think SMU does have a chance with Kevin Jennings, their passing attack, and then throwing in a few wrinkles here and there as well.
Yeah, so I had them winning 23-19 by the end of it. The next game's going to be the same day at 4 p.m. We got Clemson playing at Texas with a spread of 12 in Texas's favor. I mean, this is the biggest spread of the day or of the first round, and I think for good reason, in my opinion.
I think, I agree that it should be the highest spread, but 12 is a little bit much, in my opinion. Clemson has been a little bit underwhelming compared to their standards this year. I mean, they needed to win that ACC championship against SMU with that final kick, long kick, 56-yarder to make the playoffs in the first place. So you can say what you want about Clemson. I understand they're the 12th seed, they're the lowest overall seed, all that. But I have just been so low on Texas all year. They've had 3 good matchups, you can say. Georgia, they lost both times by, I think, double digit, or 2 possessions both times. And then Vandy, I mean, I would consider them all right. They only beat them by 3.
Yeah.
They just don't, on paper, they're amazing, but they've just been kind of bleh. Even in their wins, I don't know. I'm a Texas hater. But so I had Texas winning by a little bit, 27-24. I think Clemson covers the spread. And even though this might be a little bit of an ambitious prediction, I think they will just cover the spread in general.
Yeah, Quinn Ewers has been weird this year. I guess he's kind of been weird every year.
Yeah,
But he hasn't been what we expected. But it hasn't stopped Texas from winning unless they're playing a team named Georgia. And I think Clemson is much worse than Georgia. And I think Texas is just overall better than Clemson. So I had Texas winning 30-13. Not really necessarily close at all.
The one storyline in this game is Cade Klubnik is from, I know he's from Texas, might be Arlington as well. So, when that matchup got released, he was really happy. He was excited to go back home and kind of show out for his hometown crowd. It's going to be interesting how they limit him and Phil Maffa. He's really good as well. Probably the most underrated running back in the country, in my opinion. But yeah, the Texas offense is supposed to be this really dynamic and exciting offense overall. And it has been to a degree this year. I like the Texas defense a little bit more. So yeah, this should be a low-scoring game, but we'll see what happens. This, could be upset watch for Texas here.
And then the best game of the first round, of course, Tennessee at Ohio State. If you want to know our thoughts and prediction for that game, check out our previous video, the Ohio State versus Tennessee preview and prediction. So let's move on to how we see the playoffs shaping out.
Yes.
With these winners and losers that we just predicted.
Shea and I have predicted the entire bracket. We're not going to go in depth with the scoring. Every week we'll do, go over the score predictions of each team. We just went through the whole bracket and kind of a March Madness style picked each game.
And yeah, obviously Jason and I picked different teams to win in some of those matchups. So I have Notre Dame moving on, SMU moving on, Texas and Tennessee all moving on.
Yeah, and I have Notre Dame moving on, Penn State, Texas, and Tennessee, so we only differ with that Penn State-SMU matchup.
So we look ahead to Oregon and Tennessee. Yeah, definitely an extremely tough matchup for Tennessee. I just don't think we can – not that we don't have a chance, but we aren't at Oregon's level at the moment, and I just don't see us winning.
I think that Oregon and Ohio State are comparable. I mean, obviously they had a 1-point game earlier in the season. But, I mean, Oregon is just as solid as you can get in the country. They may not have a plethora of strengths that overwhelm you, but they surely do not have any weaknesses either. So, yeah, I would have Oregon come out on that one on top. We do have to keep in mind that these games are at a neutral site in the kind of New Year's Six bowl locations. Yeah. That one is going to be in California if we do beat Ohio State, so that'll be a tough one for Tennessee. I assume they would get some home field advantage in that regard, but yeah, just Oregon's a really, really good team. They're the 1 seed for a reason.
And we had Texas beating Clemson, so then they go on to play Arizona State.
God, that would be a fun one, dude. Arizona State is really them and Boise State are kind of the two Cinderellas, even though they're high seeds. But yeah, everyone's on their back, if you will.
Scattaboo is so fun to watch. He's actually just insane when he has the ball.
Mm-hmm.
And Texas, like we said, is a weird team. They can beat the Clemsons, but a team with as much heart as Arizona State, how many opportunities is a team like that going to get?
Mm-hmm.
I think they're going to take full advantage of it and beat Texas.
Yes. I actually agree with you. There's just something about this Arizona State team. They're full of energy. They're really hype. Sam Leavitt, their quarterback, has made plays for them down the stretch. And they've kind of come out of nowhere late in the season here, winning the Big 12. But, yeah, I had Arizona State as well. I mean, that game I believe would be played in Atlanta. So even though they get that bowl location, Texas would still have more of an advantage geographically. And this would have been, their third time playing in Mercedes-Benz Stadium, playing Georgia and then playing Georgia again, both in Atlanta. But, yeah, Arizona State just has this kind of weird Cinderella feel to them.
Mm-hmm. So here's where we disagreed. I have SMU matched up against Boise State. Very tough matchup for me. Boise State's schedule and SMU too have been just mostly weak, and it makes it really hard to tell just how the outcome would be for this game. But I'm going to take the more well-rounded team in SMU to beat Boise State.
Yeah, I was on the same line of thinking as you. I said earlier, Boise State is one of the hardest teams to kind of compare against the rest of the field. We've only seen them play one playoff team in Oregon, and they actually kept it close. That was the first game of the year. But yeah, it's just hard to tell. Obviously, Ashton Genty, this is more true in basketball, but when you have the best player on the field at all times, you're always going to have a chance to win. I just don't think they, edge it out here. I had Penn State moving on in the first round, whereas you had SMU. But I was on the same line of thinking in terms of both of those teams could probably beat Boise, so I have Penn State moving on.
And then we agreed that Notre Dame would beat Indiana, and now their matchup with Georgia. Georgia's kind of like Texas for me. Yes, they are good. Yes, they're capable, but will they show that and, actually win the game? In this scenario, I don't think so. I think Notre Dame pulls out the win here.
To me, this is the best game of my predicted second round. I think this would be really close, really tight, but again, Georgia is also a difficult team to predict because you have them beating Georgia Tech, who they're a good team, don't get me wrong, but you have them beating Georgia Tech at home in like 7 overtimes, barely edging that one out, and then turning around and beating Texas handily, I guess. The big storyline for them is their quarterback, Carson Beck. He's probably done in a Georgia uniform. Either he transfers or he declares for the draft. I don't think he's staying around. Gunnar Stockton was pretty okay. He did what he needed to do against Texas. So I assume they stick with him if they have a choice or not with Carson Beck's injury. But I had Georgia edging it out here. I don't hate Notre Dame or Georgia in this matchup. You can predict either one, and it makes sense to me. But yeah, it's just what Georgia team comes out here is what will determine this matchup.
So yeah, we got some different outcomes here. But we do have one that's the same. Arizona State versus Oregon. This one's probably the most obvious in the whole bracket. And maybe this is where I'm completely wrong. But I think Oregon just is a better team than Arizona State. They're better coached, and they've been in situations like this before.
Yeah, you're right. Oregon's a better team, undeniably, on paper and probably what they've shown on the field as well. Two ex-Pac-12 teams fighting here in the semifinal round, or quarterfinal round, excuse me. Every direction leads to Oregon. I'm also going to pick them, but just what if Arizona State could continue that Cinderella run? That would be magical, and I would root for that, considering Oregon would have just beat Tennessee in this scenario, but I have Oregon as well.
Yeah. And then here's where we're completely different. I have SMU and Notre Dame playing. I think there's another obvious one. I don't think SMU and Arizona State are winning this thing. No matter how the bracket shapes out for them, I really just don't think they're going to make it they made it far, but not far enough. This is where SMU's fun ends. I have Notre Dame moving on to play Oregon.
Yeah, again, two completely different teams here for us. I have Penn State and Georgia in this matchup. Again, I have Georgia coming out victorious. We've seen them be very, very good in postseason scenarios since Kirby got there, and I don't really think that changes. If Gunnar Stockton can play up to snuff, I think that, if the rest of their team plays consistently like they do against Texas, that they can beat pretty much any team in the field. So I have Georgia coming out on top as well. Just, Penn State hasn't done anything in the postseason in forever.
Yeah.
And what's the reasoning that should change here? Like, Drew Aller isn't a difference maker. Nick Singleton and Tyler Warren are, but how much of a difference maker are they? So, if Georgia can block the Penn State front, which is really, really good, I think they can win this game by a score.
So mine is Oregon versus Notre Dame. Yours is Oregon versus Georgia.
Mm-hmm.
I think these are both, no one would be surprised if they saw these outcomes.
Right.
And they're both very tough to predict. But when it comes to Oregon Notre Dame, I'm just gonna go with the hot hand here. I think Oregon gets another dub. They become the champion. They become the champions. It's not fun to predict the best team
of course,
to win it all, but just their bracket, I don't know. They got not an easy hand, of course, but a doable one.
Even though in most bracket picks Oregon was the most popular champion, it feels kind of weird to have them win it all because they do seem beatable, even though they haven't gotten beat. A possible Ohio State-Oregon matchup in the second round would be very anticipated for the rematch there. But I had the same thing. I had Oregon beating out Georgia. I don't know. In basketball with March Madness, you really go upset heavy a lot, upsets are more common. But it's hard to tell in this inaugural college football playoff because, you just don't know how much variability there will be. I know I picked Oregon, Georgia in the championship game, which is super boring. It's super chalk. But I don't know. I just think that the team that has showed the least weakness throughout this season will continue to do that and win it all in Oregon.
And just like this video, every week we're going to come back, see how well we did, and then we are going to predict the next week's games and the matchups that come out. So thank you so much for listening. This has been the PCS Volcast. If you enjoyed the video, give us a like and subscribe for more. This has been Shea and Jace.
Go Vols!
Go Vols!